Welcome back to my YouTube channel. On today's video, we're going to talk about how to propagate a tomato plant from a cutting. Now, this is a very simple method that people can do to ensure that you have an exact clone from a mother plant that you like. You can do this when you have a tomato plant from the previous season that you really liked and you would like to keep having this plant over the course of the next season. A second reason why people propagate from cuttings is because you have a faster fruiting time. Instead of waiting for a seed to sprout and develop itself into an adult phase, you can take a cutting from an already adult plant and this will be ready to start fruiting within weeks. And so for this project, we've come out here to this greenhouse from a neighbor's garden, and we're going to find a tomato plant in here that I like, and we're going to find a place on this plant where we can make the cut. And for this, all you need is a good pair of scissors, and you need to have a prepared little cup with some ground. So as you can see here, my neighbor has this kind of row of tomato plants that's a little bit abandoned, and they're starting to die. And as you can see, there's still quite a couple of little juicy plants here, juicy ones. So I'm going to try to find here on one of this bigger tomato plant in the back, a place where you can trim a cutting. Okay, so for example, let's take a look at this tomato plant here. You see, you have this kind of big main stem that comes out of the ground. This is the main stalk. And you have all these little side shoots that are growing. So from these side shoots, you can actually trim these off, and these will grow into its adult plants. And I don't know if this camera will pick it up, but we can try. If you can see here, if you see these little white hairs, these are actually the sproutings of little roots. If these hairs get contact into moist ground, they will actually develop into full-grown roots. So anywhere along this cut, anywhere along this point, you can create a new plant from this. Now, how do you find a place to cut? Well, you have to make sure that, well, it's not your main stem because you don't want to hurt your plant. So you have to make sure it's not this big, thick main stem. You also don't want to cut anything that's already fruiting. Like, for example, here we have a little fruit, so we don't want to cut this. We don't want to cut this because this will hurt the plant. But for example, here, this little offshoot could make a perfect place to cut. And as you can see here, this is probably the best place to separate it. So we're going to try to make a cut here. We're going to take this little branch, and we're going to try to separate it here at this base, at this point in the base. So, sorry, I would have liked to have shown it on camera, but I couldn't handle the scissors and the camera at the same time. So here's a post-cut plant. You can see here I made a pretty decent little incision. I'm going to zoom in on this here with the macro lens. Okay. So here you can see this little cutting. This has some of the little white hairs. And I think this little point here is probably the good beginning of a nice root. So now we're going to stick this into a cup of wet ground and hope that it works. Okay, so here this is our little cutting. As you can see here, we have prepared a little pot. It's filled with ground from the compost pile, and I've already watered it down with collected rainwater. And so here's the little cutting. And basically we're going to strip down some of the lower leaves to expose more of the stem. And we just want to keep some of the bigger leaves on top that can still make some of the photosynthesis reaction and give the plant the energy it needs to keep growing. So now I put the camera down to free my hands, and we're basically just going to start here. So basically we're just going to start somewhere about here. We're going to put our fingers down, and we're just going to pull the plant out. And then we'll pull this one off. Now you see we stripped the bottom leaves. I think I'll probably still take these two off. And this dead one here. Okay. And now this leaves here just the plant top. And this now should be ready to plant. So basically, to put this the cutting into the pot, I'm just going to poke a hole all the way down, a hole with all my finger. So now you see there's a hole. Now I'm just going to stick the cutting into this hole. all the way down, as deep as it can go. Maybe a little deeper. And then I'm just going to close the hole with the ground around it. And done. Now I'm going to water it a bit more so the ground gets a little bit more wet, and I'm going to here, as you can see here in the bottom, I'm going to leave a little reservoir of collected rainwater so that the root of the plant can dig its way through the soil and get into this water and start to reach out. As you can see here from these little radicchios, you can see the extensive rooting network system that I developed. It's only been sitting here for about a month already. You can really see how big the root system got compared to this one, which has only been here a couple days. You can really see the difference. And hopefully the tomato plant's roots will grow as big and as intertwined as these. When they get that big, hopefully in some weeks, then they will be ready to be transplanted into the ground.